Hey, everybody's here. Thank you, Jose, very much for sending everyone across. That's absolutely awesome. Tim Osman actually said that you were going to send everybody across, and there's a lot of people in the chat that actually have said they've come over from your stream. So I think shutting your stream down and sending everybody here was I can't thank you enough. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've got a couple of things that I need to speak about, really. A few of them are going to be thanks, and then I have got a little issue that I need to discuss with you guys, so bear with me. So, Jose, thank you very much for sending everybody over. I really do appreciate that. We have Tim Osman in the house, who will be doing a presentation shortly. I'll introduce him in a minute. But first I want to do a few thank yous. I should have done this prior to today, but I'll get on with it now. Adam Meakin, thank you very much, seriously. OBS, you helped me out so much last week with the OBS, and it was just excellent having your help and tutorial on how to do that, so that's what's helped getting the show going. Thank you very much. Josh, again from IRM, thank you very much again for helping me to sync OBS with YouTube. I was having a little bit of a hissy fit when that wasn't actually going too right, but you sorted that out for me, so again, thank you very much. And lastly, the introduction. So the intro that we've just played there from Mind Warped. So Mind Warped put that together. I will add his link into the description afterwards if you want to go and check out his channel. He does some excellent cool stuff over there. I think he's actually thinking of setting some kind of similar thing like this up, but it's obviously going to be delving into a lot more things, things like conspiracies, 9/11, all that kind of stuff. So go ahead over there and check his stream out. So if he ever does get around to putting a stream like this together, I will promote it on here, because he's done such an excellent job with for free as well, just absolutely brilliantly. Okay, so here we go. I need to talk about this, so let me just get this up and running. 1 second. Let's bring that up. Okay, I'll pause for 1 minute. Where are we going? Bear with me, guys. Sorry about this. A little bit of dead air right now. Whilst I figure this out. Let's transition that across. Go to the input screen again. We got that up. Something isn't working quite right here, but never mind. I need to speak about where are we? This. Here we go. So let's see if you guys can see this. So I had an email recently. I had it from Southern Israelite, aka Trigger Tits. I'm going to call him Trigger Tits because essentially this guy triggered out badly. He was due to come on this stream on Friday and put a presentation together. Unfortunately, he didn't like the way that I asked the question to Gem Panda, which was essentially verbatim. I literally asked the question verbatim to him, and he didn't like that for some reason. I have no idea why, but he triggered himself out, and essentially he doesn't want to now appear on the show on Friday. So this leaves oh, hang on, let me pop that off now, actually. Take that off. So right, so this basically leaves a position open on Friday for a flat earther to do a presentation, because he was going to come in and do a presentation for the flat earth. I have got somebody coming in to do a presentation for the globe earth on Friday. So 6 PM BST, we're looking for somebody to come in and basically take his slot over. Okay, so if you can find anybody, or you know anybody, or even yourself who wants to put little presentations together on this Friday coming, I would absolutely look forward to seeing that. Okay. Now then, why is this not working too much? Just bear with me, guys. I'm having a little bit of an issue right with OBS. It's playing up a little bit right now. Timmy, are you there, by the way?
Yep, sure am.
Cool. Excellent. So somebody's there. Something's working. I'm trying to figure a way I can get you up. One sec. Hang on, let me get Skype up. One sec. So I've got Skype up. Right, mini window. Take that off. Take that off. There we go. Right, so I've got you ready to present whenever you're ready. Tim, if you want to share your screen, I'll pop you on and we can get cracking.
Great. Well, today I'm just going to look over some of the observations that I've done. I've told Ranty here a moment ago that basically this would be more about the observations that match the globe that have been modeled both on a flat Earth and a globe Earth, and that seem to work better on a globe Earth. And I also told him that he's trying to learn, I guess, in a certain sense, and actually let people talk, unlike other channels. So as far as things in the sky, I'd like to actually come back on and talk about the impossibilities of the sky situation that we have as far as the two celestial points, the equinox observations, the sun not changing in angular size throughout the day, but rises and sets. These things are quite obvious to people with eyes to see that the Earth couldn't be flat with that. So anyway, most people know or have seen some of my observations in the past. I have a 4K drone. Well, one of them is a 4K drone, 60 FPS. It's a Phantom 4 Pro, and I took it out to the Great Salt Lake. I also took it to Lake Tahoe and San Francisco and to Texas. So I have a lot of data, basically about 1.5 terabytes full of data that I can't even really get to myself, nor needless to say, I can't present all of it. But what I found is a few observations basically that I would like to share as far as out at the Great Salt Lake mostly. And also I will be sharing the experiment, if I may be so bold to actually say, experiment across the Bonneville salt flats. A lot of people think that because flats isn't the word, that means that it's perfectly flat, like a piece of paper or edge, which, myself and Jesse Kozlowski actually tested with two $20,000 GPS units, a Trimble, and we hit all the triangulation stations, some from 1940s, and did a lot of work out there. We also the next day went to Antelope Island and took an auto level, took the GPS units, took all of my camera equipment out there. So I will be sharing a bit of that as well. But one thing I would like to point out is that's very obvious to me when it comes to the Great Salt Lake is that there are observations you can do in basically every direction because every direction has mountains. So there is a very, very calm water. And why I actually really like the Great Salt Lake is because it's higher in altitude. It's about 4,200 feet above sea level. And the water is so shallow that there's not many waves, number one, but also that the air temperature usually matches very closely, at least, to the water temperature. So you don't get too many days where you get just anomalous results that it seems as though, in my opinion, flat earthers like to look at as far as miraging, inferior miraging, superior miraging, and all kinds of atmospheric effects that happen. So basically, it's higher in altitude, again, like I said, which is going to help out with observations and clarity. And a lot of times, I've tried to tell Jaron to come out here. Actually, the last time that we spoke was when Ranty was on with Jaron on his channel and talking about his tidal bores and his other observations out near the ocean, which of course is at sea level. And so Jaron would rather go to places like Salton Sea, which I'm not bagging on him. I'm just saying that, this is a place where it's, over 200 feet below sea level, and it's known for very bad, basically, atmospheric conditions. So a lot of flat earthers have even proposed on coming out to Salt Lake. I've invited them. I said that I would put them up. I do a lot of stuff they could use my equipment. I would drive them out to Antelope Island. And one being Flat Earth Fokker, he was in town for about 5 days, where he basically would rather party all night and go out and not take a free trip where I would have paid for the entrance to Antelope Island. He could use my equipment, my P900s, my D3200. He could have used the drone, messed around, hacked around out there. But I have actually actively tried to get people to come out here to do observations out here, and it seems as though even after this long, I still am basically the only one that has come out here and done this. So the invitation's still out for anybody that is actually interested in the shape of the Earth inquiry. But like I said, thus far, I haven't seen too many. So anyway, this was all by accident. When I first came out here, I was kind of just hacking around with a P900 and a drone. And I just was looking through some of my film and ended up seeing that there were buildings in the distance. And I was very surprised that you could see Salt Lake City from 27 miles away. Of course, at the time, I didn't know how distant they were, but I ended up going many, many times after that and did observations. And some days were clearer than others, but the 612 is some of my best observations, which I'll share some here now. Let me turn this sound off. And to me, this is very clear, mostly looking at Google Earth and actually looking at how much is being obstructed. That's the Capitol building there on the left, and this here is actually the Mormon building. I just call it the Mormon building. It probably has a more official name. But these buildings are actually being obstructed by, as far as the Mormon building here, half the building is being obstructed by what flat earthers call flat water. And like I said, this place is extremely level, calm water where it's excellent to go and do observations at. But not only that, it's actually 100 feet in elevation before the base of the building even starts. So we're missing over 350 feet being obstructed. And the amount of stuff is miraculous that's actually being obstructed, like I-15, billboards, buildings. I mean, it's all being obstructed. And this day is exceptionally clear to actually see the effects of what we call curvature on the Earth here. So I have pictures and videos from this day and probably about 8 to 10 different days doing observations from pretty low, about 1.5 foot. I actually got in the water. I have pictures of that as well, of me walking around in sandals in the Great Salt Lake, and 5 foot, and then on the causeway, which is about 25 foot. And seeing the difference is pretty staggering, and a lot of people probably have seen these observations before. But it doesn't really matter how many times I show them or how long ago they happen. They're still relevant, I would say, in this conversation. So this is about 27 foot, about 30 foot. And as you can tell, you can start to see more and more of the buildings. And also what's interesting is, in my opinion, and Ranty actually looks into optics and into miraging and stuff like this, but I actually got less miraging closer to the water than I did further up from the water. So this is actually before sunset, and actually not this one. But I do have time lapses just before sunset where you can see the effects of atmospheric conditions happening, the temperature inversions from differing temperatures happening. And so it does leave a little bit as far as on the flat Earth side to say this is anomalous or things are sinking or there's all kinds of refractive effects. But I've done it so many times that I can tell that I'll never see the bottom of the buildings unless I go much, much higher, which I actually have, which I'll need to actually bring up. I forgot to bring that up. But anyway, one thing that is really clear to me is the observations from the drone. And I think it's kind of important, as far as most observations, to try to get a little bit of height in them, in that the lower that you are to the ground, most always, you're going to get the most miraging. You're going to get a lot of different effects that can happen. But once you start to rise, things do start to clear out a lot of times. So I have many different, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but many different observations looking basically west towards California here, and I'll show you on Google Earth. This is a 37-mile observation to Strong's Knob over here. So this is 4,200 feet, the water level. And then up to here is about 600-foot difference over on Strong's Knob. So a lot of these observations are done from the Antelope Island Causeway right here. As you can see, I actually am looking kind of east, southeast in these observations towards Salt Lake City here. And these, usually the drone ones are flown from the causeway, where we will get into where me and Jesse actually went up with equipment onto this Buffalo Point here and looked west. And I'll show you the differences there. But needless to say, this is about 600 feet, this Strong's Knob mountain right here. Or it's just like a little, it's kind of interesting. It just pops up out of nowhere. And all around it really is kind of level, so to speak, near the water level. So on the right, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but on the right side, we'll see what happens as the drone rises up. And this is not just Strong's Knob observations. Everywhere you can see, as you're lower to the ground, you actually see less of the mountains as opposed to as you rise up. And you might want to also note that this water this day, over such an expanse, we're talking 37 miles of water that is basically completely level. There's really no other place that I've ever seen in my life that has these kinds of conditions. And a lot of it probably has to do with the salinity of the water out at the Great Salt Lake. But as you can see, this mountain peak that's about over 600 feet high can't be seen towards the ground. But as you raise up, you start to actually see it in its water level, seeing white caps of mountains as clear as day from nearly 80 or probably about 70 miles in those. But this is something you just wouldn't expect on a flat Earth. So in comparison to near the ground, there's a little bit of kind of mirroring and a little bit of haziness, but really not really. This doesn't really account for the 600 feet that is completely obstructed. As you can see, you raise up and you start to see 37 miles away, Strong's Knob. So I have 4 of those here to show. I probably have about 8. So the important thing is to basically repeat these tests, these observations, and also do them on different atmospheric condition days and all throughout the year, so that you can see when it's cold out, when it's hot out, when it's beautiful out, whenever. So again, as you raise up, you'll start to see here in the middle, almost on this shot, Strong's Knob start to appear with altitude. This isn't something that you would expect on a flat Earth. And what's interesting is that these observations, in my opinion, kill the flat Earth. And it actually has a lot of flat earthers making up excuses. So some of us decided to start actually listing the excuses that are happening, and as opposed to it being the curvature of the Earth, or that it's not flat, basically. And what we have found is that we're up to 86 different excuses now. So definitely go and check out Everett Anderson. He's keeping a very good list of this happening here. And at the very beginning, there was the perspective, the angle of attack, optical slant, Aries diffraction, zone of invisibility, circle of confusion. A lot of them were used for quite a while, but nowadays, there's Riley criterion, there's all kinds of stuff. And usually it's basically just not like this one here. But like I said, we're up to 86, and atmospheric attenuation actually was from Jay Tolan. That was an addition that I made from Jay Tolan Media, which actually has some of the best globe Earth evidence on his channel using infrared when he's looking 123 miles at Mount San Jacinto. And he incorrectly actually labels the mountain and says that basically it's a flat Earth. And I don't know if the guy's a Poe or what, but flat Earth. But basically, there's over 6,000 feet of that mountain being obstructed, even when he's about 86 feet off the water near Malibu. So really, at the end of the day, even in my opinion and in other globe earthers' opinion, Ranty has done tons of observations, and tons of observations actually show what I'm trying to demonstrate here, is that there is there is geometry to the Earth. There is a curvature away from us. That's why you can only see the horizon at a certain distance. And when you start to rise up, you start to see further and further of that horizon. That's why the sun actually sets without changing in angular size throughout the day. These things are pretty intuitive, truthfully, unless you're having issues with conspiracy and want to believe, or you want to be part of the gang or whatever it is. So here's another observation, and I got one more after this, but of Strong's Knob from 37 miles away. And like all the other ones, you can't see it even when you're about 15, 20 feet up in the air. But as you start to raise up in altitude, the 600-foot plus peak starts to appear, and with more altitude you actually start to see more and more of it. This is something that is actually indicative of looking over a curved surface. When we began the flat Earth, a lot of people said that we can see too far and that they have flat Earth evidence that ended up, in my opinion, turning into actually globe evidence once people actually looked at it. And there's only a few. I looked at all of Ranty's work probably about 6 or 7 months ago. All of it, when I looked at it for 3 hours or so, all of it, to my opinion, matched the globe Earth, besides one. One of them, I think it might be Barrow and Furness or whatever. One of them was pretty tricky. He was really low to the ground. And, I don't like to run around and say, oh, refraction and super looming and super duper epic looming and all this nonsense. So that one doesn't negate the fact, with all of my observations, it doesn't negate the fact that there's two celestial points and all of the other observations that definitely match on a globe. So obviously that day we had some extraordinary conditions that could pull stuff up, and that's basically what happened. So again, this is 6/12, the day that I did most of my Salt Lake City observations, as far as one of the clearest days. And as you can see, even with the drone, it's one of the most beautiful days ever, actually. And so as I lower again towards the middle of this observation, we're seeing Strong's Knob start to be obstructed by what is called flat water. And to me, flat water, looking above the flat water, and if you think about it orthographically, even though that's kind of like heresy to some people, you would expect to see the whole thing, and we don't near the ground. And I'll kind of go quicker with this, but obviously as you get lower to the ground, like I said, not only Strong's Knob, but a lot of these mountains over here become obstructed by flat water, supposedly. So this is very indicative of the Earth curving away from us. And not only that, we've actually done modeling of my observations. Walter Bislands, thankfully, has done really good modeling of my observations, what it would look like on a globe Earth and what it would look like on a flat Earth. And you can actually mess around with refraction on this. I mean, this guy is an absolute amazing modeler. And so much so, he actually made a model of the flat Earth. It's called Flat Earth Dome Model. And that's actually being used. And I saw someone using it last night on Jose's channel. used, and they cut it out and they don't give him any credit. And this also is being used by Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole for his little app that he's using, and Jaron is using it as well because it is the best model and best explanation for how the things in the sky as far as the sun and moon would work. And this is actually also where Jaron started with the personal atmospheric dome. This was literally about 14 days after Walter Bislands had posted this. So that's a whole nother issue, and I don't want to, it's not really about my presentation, truthfully, but I could talk hours about that. But this is what you would expect to see over Salt Lake. And of course, there's atmospheric conditions that can happen, but if you actually think about it, you're looking above the water. You would probably have to say that there's a lot of sinking going on almost every single day, because it's always happening when I go out there. It is always the case that I can't see the other beach. I can't see the bottoms of the buildings. I can't see I-15. I can't see so much that in my opinion, until better evidence is out, should be seen. It really should be seen. This should not be happening on a flat Earth. This is not intuitive at all for me to say that the Earth is flat. Well, what is, call everybody in Salt Lake City because they're underwater right now, when really then I drive home and it's not the case. So anyway, that's probably about enough. I'll have to bring my comparison here. Let's see, of this day that I have here. Lots of memes. I even have Ranty's house here, which I won't bring up. But let's see. This here is a comparison of that day. And to me, this is demonstrating that the Earth is curved, because with altitude, I start to see more and more of the buildings. And, like I said, there's 86 different excuses for what we call simply curvature. And these are just for ground observations. This is, needless to say that there's 100 different other things, solar and lunar eclipses and, the equinox observations and it's just absolutely ridiculous, truthfully, to me, that people, in my opinion, people say that they're truth seekers. But really what they're trying to do is seek for excuses to continue their bias, their conspiratorial bias and narrative of a flat Earth. And I just think it's really intellectually dishonest that they can see these things and not actually say, well, perhaps it could be curvature. And really, I've always said, why isn't it curvature? How do you know that it's not curvature? This is what, it can be modeled, and it matches the globe Earth perfectly. And there is a little bit of a disparity as far as a few feet, but these things, obviously with atmospheric conditions and such, do change pretty rapidly. So but for the most part, it can basically be seen almost every single day, unless there's a smoke or there's fire in California or something. It can be seen every single day that you can't see the bottom of the buildings. You just can't, unless you're higher up in altitude. So some of these observations here are just to demonstrate that on a less clear day, you're going to get a little bit of inferior miraging here. It looks like a little bit of mirroring, but the fact still remains that you can't see the bottom of the buildings. And that's a big deal for me, as far as me going out and actually testing these things and saying, hey, I don't care if it's popcorn shape or it's concave or convex or flat. I actually just went out to see the truth of the matter. And every single time, it was pretty astoundingly the same answer, in that the Earth for sure does curve, and pretty much the same as what we were proposed as children. And I just don't see much of a conspiracy really to be had as far as cui bono in this whole thing. You'd think that there would be some kind of benefit, and the best thing to hide the shape of the Earth, the best thing that I've ever heard was they're trying to hide God, which is a really dumb argument, in my opinion. I mean, man can't hide God. If God wanted to be seen, he would be seen, in my opinion, or they're hiding more land. And really, there's no evidence for that. So really, there's a huge conspiracy, and I won't go to the Sean Hawkins or some of the Globe cucks that will say, well, there's got to be 1 million people in on this conspiracy. Well, no, if the mathematics was right and you could have perhaps a few thousand people that would know it to a full extent, but really it's so hard at this point for me to believe that flat Earth has any merit at all. After even 4.5 years of looking into it, they're just excuses at this point, and it's really kind of sad, truthfully, to me. So anyway, I'll start getting into some of the salt flats observations. I might as well actually go into Antelope Island since we're already talking about it. This was when myself and Jesse went out to Antelope Island. He brought his equipment as far as his Trimble, and we went and got a auto level right here to do some observations, looking through it. Well, actually right here is the auto level. So he went out and looked in many different directions, actually, because like I said before, there's mountains in every direction, but also at different distances. So he was getting all kinds of bearings and information. So much, we have so much data from that day, we can't even sit down and have a conversation about it, because it's pretty overwhelming, truthfully. So one of the things I did was basically look at, here's his GPS so that I could get actually really good, very precise measurements of how high I was off the water, looking at Strong's Knob. And basically from the water this day, we could see Strong's Knob, just a mere hint of it near the water, probably a few feet. And also that same day, though, we went up obviously higher. I think it's about 250 feet, if I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken, rather, and started to look at Strong's Knob and other places. This observation right here this mountain's probably 80 miles away. I mean, that's what's so cool about coming out here and doing observations. You can really look in any direction, like I said, and see different effects of the Earth being curved. So this here is Strong's Knob from 250 feet compared to what we saw before. And this is something that literally I told him as we're basically going down a hill and then about to go up a hill to Buffalo Point. I said, just look with your eyes. And we have he handed me his camera and I zoomed in. But just with your eyes, even going down a large portion of hill, you can see this 37 miles away, and you can see it start to become obstructed by the water, even with your eyes, 37 miles away. So a lot of people think that you need a Nikon P900 for all of this stuff, but really you don't. This is a Nikon D3200 that has a much better sensor on it than the P900, which is pretty terrible, truthfully. And you don't need super zoom lenses to be able to actually make observations such as this. So did a lot of sightseeing, and we went and found, I think, the only triangulation station monument there. And like I've said before, Jesse was being surrounded by buffalo, and I'm like, hey, they can be pretty aggressive, man. It could be pretty dangerous. And he's just like, nah, it's okay. So I'm ready to basically run back to the car as these buffalo are encircling us, basically. But he didn't seem to mind. So we hit this station here, as we did many on the Bonneville Salt Flats. We hit all of them on the Bonneville Salt Flats because he's kind of a connoisseur of surveying almost. I mean, he really loves doing it, and so we didn't come out here to disprove flat Earth. We came out here to hack around, see what we would see. And so it's a beautiful place. I would definitely tell people to come and check it out. It's absolutely amazing. And I would say definitely to try to come when it's not in the summer seasons, the hotter seasons, because they're up on Buffalo Point are gnats that will actually eat you alive, literally, that will follow you around in swarms and bite your face and leave marks for weeks at a time. And also there are an insane amount of bugs basically near the water. So it's not the best, I'd say, near to the warmer season, but there's plenty of time to go out there everywhere, every time else, basically. So anyway, on to the Bonneville salt flats. You would think that this place would be a good place to go and do observations such as this, to go and test. This is the first run that we did, and as you can see on the truck here, we actually have a GPS unit, and of course he does test for how high the actual unit is. And these are very, very precise units that are actually logging ECEF, Earth-centered Earth fixed coordinates. They're XYZ Cartesian coordinates, and it doesn't have a bias. It's just actually using about 15. I saw about 12 to 19 different satellites it was using, from Russian satellites like GLONASS and even American GPS satellites. So they're pinging and giving the XYZ coordinates basically to us, where we can kind of just plot them on a graph. So anyway, that's the back road that we went to, where a lot of the triangulation stations are. So we hit those up. But as you could see on that last one, we actually had the different unit on, which you can see here. This is another GPS unit that we did. So we did 2 runs, about 37 miles of extremely level road, but also extremely straight, which is actually pretty important as far as getting a decent data set, as we did. So, like I said, we hit up a lot of the triangulation stations and kind of geodetic surveying points, like this one here is 1965. I learned a lot from him. Very, very interesting, cool guy. And we had a ton of fun, ton of fun actually doing this. So I will have to say that, thanks to Flat Earth, I went out and tested these things, and I actually know a lot more about reality now because of this topic. But as far as people, charlatanizing off of it, as far as people using people or being a part of a crowd, I've always had a pretty staunch stance in that, I find it to be pretty wrong. But anyway, again, Walter Bislin, the genius here, he actually allowed us to, made us a ECEF where you can just plug in your data points, and you'll actually be able to display the. And really, I mean, this is just actually really crazy what he's done here. But basically, with this, we noticed that we got within about 0.6% of the Earth's presupposed radius. So we're very, very close to the actual parameters of the Earth that they've told us. And here's kind of some of the data points. Really, you only need about 3 to do something like this. But we have, on just this one run, we have 1,642. So that's all plotted into this here. And it, again, without using observations, without using optical equipment, so to speak, we're actually using GPS, an unbiased XYZ Cartesian coordinate system that you can actually plot. And another method of testing the shape of the Earth ends up, for me at least, showing that the Earth is indeed spherical. And I think that is about all I have, Rancy.
up pretty high. Our heads are almost in the clouds, and their feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me. They won't let go of me. Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. So let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. They can be cruel and mean and a huge pain. Our heads are in the clouds now. Don't let them make it rain. A smile can be the sun they're missing out on their rainy day. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. You defy gravity. They say we aren't strong enough. We don't have what it takes. I say yeah, they're wrong enough, and we'll show them someday. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Oh yeah, don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. You defy gravity. You defy gravity. Yeah, yeah. At you while you defy gravity.
Timmy, are you
Yep.
there? We're back. Okie dokie. Right. Well, it appears that we haven't had any questions come through as of yet. However, I have had a comment from somebody called Level World who says, "Sorry to say, but your show is not beneficial in any aspect. It's just your ego, stupidity, or deliberately misleading people and spreading more globe propaganda." Well, Level World, you don't understand the format. You see, Timmy has done a presentation. Hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks, a flat earther will get to come in and do a counter presentation. And then if the
No
two
audio, they're saying. No audio on you, Rancy, sorry.
Really?
That's what they're saying.
I think they're just trolling. I think they are just trolling.
Yeah, they might be.
I think more people would have said there was no audio if that was the case. Anyway, the point is, Somebody comes in to do a counter presentation. Timmy, I'm sure you'll be aware that there'll be plenty of people wanting to do a counter presentation. In that respect, you two then get a chance to butt heads. So, there we go. There we go. It's just it's a suck it and see. Let's see where this ends up in a month's time. It's a little too early to be saying one thing or another when you haven't actually seen the full format yet. Okie dokie. So, right, let's get some questions. Anybody in the chat want to ask a question? Please either tag me or Timmy Osman, and we will put it to the expert. In this case, Timmy.
I got one. Flat Earth Reset says, Tim Osman, where is the curvature from left to right? It should be visible. He's can't spell visible correctly, unfortunately. But this is something that's very simply put, I guess, in a certain sense, in saying that seeing x-axis curvature, you're gonna have to actually go quite a bit higher than these observations. But as far as seeing the results of curvature on, so to speak, the z-axis, you looking at something much more distant, is what we do when we're observing things at the ground. So you're not going to see a lot of z-axis, so to speak, curvature high in the sky, but you will see x-axis curvature. So just look at Rob Skiba's balloon test, look at Dwayne Kellum's balloon. Using rectilinear lenses, you'll find your x-axis curvature if that's what you want. And why you don't see x-axis curvature near the ground is because the horizon, you're not actually seeing 69 miles like you can see if you're looking at a distant object. And the effects of curvature, you're not seeing 69 miles when you zoom in a P900. You're not going to see it most likely even from the ground with the least zoom you can have. So this is a very simple thing, and really people should stop using that argument because it's really silly at this point.
Okay, thank you Trish for the super chat. She says, can everyone from Nathan's chat stop coming here and hijacking the chat? QE's presentation last night was stupid. Okay, so that's what Trish has to say. We have a question from Brian Leake who says, Tim Osman, question, was the angle to the cutoff point of the buildings less than 1 degree? Angular vision is limited to 0.25 degrees.
No, it wasn't less than 1 degree. And this Riley criterion nonsense and this angle of attack nonsense is just people that have listened to Nathan Oakley and are actually parroting what he says. It doesn't make any sense that you couldn't see the bottom of the building. No, they weren't less than 1 degree, not even close. And actually, the top half of the building should be the same size as the bottom half of the building, unless you want to live in Bizarro World with Nathan Oakley.
Okay, so we have a question from Kawabunga Joe who says, why does Timmy attribute curvature to obstruction, especially when conditions change and these obstructions are no longer there and we can see buildings/structures?
I tried to kind of demonstrate or at least talk about that I went out throughout the year in different conditions and I never saw more than half the buildings being about 2 to 5 foot up, but when I was 25 foot up, you could start to see more and more the bottom of the building. But the old adage was that boats go over the horizon, and in early flat Earth, it was like, no, you can just zoom back in on them. And so it doesn't matter the amount of zoom when the sun starts to set or when these buildings are being obstructed by the water you're not going to bring it back into focus. So.
Okay, we have a question from Chris Berry who asks, why does Tim believe Ranty's 18-mile at 1 foot observation shows zero curvature? ?
That was brought up obviously in the presentation. I looked through all your work, like I said, and a lot of it to me showed curvature of the Earth, some of the lighthouses and such. But that one I couldn't figure out. That one didn't make sense, and I'm not going to say that you're a liar or anything like that because it's just what other people do. But I think that you legitimately went out there and caught something pretty spectacular. And that's why for a while I was actually asking you to go and try to repeat that observation as far as being close to the ground and seeing so far. But again, there are atmospheric conditions that happen. There is looming. I guess according to Rumpus, there's super duper epic looming as well. And it's just the way that it is. So a lot of this is very anomalous, but that's why, you know, a lot of what I will obviously do in another presentation is how the sky tells us. There's no argument even that we're on a sphere. So you don't need to invoke perspective or atmospheric conditions for what the sky is telling us every day, and that would be as simple as a sunrise and sunset. I mean, it's really silly at this point. But to answer the question, I guess I kind of did, but I don't know. I don't know what happened that day. That's the only one I couldn't really figure out. And I tried to tell Ranty to repeat that observation, which he did, as far as going out there and doing a similar observation. But I'm not sure that I ever saw that he had a similar observation as far as seeing so much of it.
Okay, we have a question from Mr. Brian22. How much angular size change do you take into account when doing your observations? And I know that Jesse does not take into account, as he admitted he did not. He just presumes Earth curve.
Angular size change, you know, I know that a lot of people are going to continue to ask questions that go along the lines of what Nathan Oakley said for over 700 shows about angle of attack and angular size change, but I'm changing the angular size of the object with the camera lens, so I'm zooming in on it, and you would expect, if it was something to do with angular size, that when I'm zoomed out, I would see less of the, or more of the building, and then when I zoom in, I would see less, or vice versa. I'm not really sure what they're actually saying, but the fact remains is that the water comes up and actually obstructs the buildings, and it obstructs mountains. And you know, I've actually been on Nathan Oakley's show to ask him, how do I take angular size into effect? What is that actually going to do? And a lot of people run around and say, oh, they don't take angular size into effect when it comes to the Earth curve calculators. Well, Walter Bislan's has that built into his calculator. So I don't know where to go. Like, if someone can tell me what I'm supposed to take into effect as far as angular size and how, and also the conclusion how that actually affects what's being obstructed by over 300 feet, and in the case of Strong's Knob, over 600 feet being obstructed near the ground, and then for some reason angular size doesn't matter, I guess, or it does matter when you start raising up. Like, these arguments are just really pathetic, in my opinion. And if I did take angular size into effect and gave you the angular size of the buildings and the expected angular size or whatever, like, what would that actually do? It's just rhetoric, really, from Nathan Oakley's show, truthfully.
Okay, so Racer FE asks, why did Tim say looking in one direction you can't prove the globe on Flat Earth Debate 681?
Because basically, if you look in one direction, you could basically demonstrate that the Earth is curving in that one direction. But what Racer obviously didn't understand when I brought up Google Earth is that in these observations, looking at Strong's Knob is actually towards the west, and looking at Salt Lake City is towards the southeast. So I have observations of mountains in every direction. And furthermore, we have Soundly looking basically north-south over, on the other side of the United States, and getting similar results that match up with Walter Bislan's models as well. So I have plenty of examples of looking in different directions where you get the same effect over water when you look in different directions.
Okay, so we have a question from Divadant. Can you ask what is your opinion of the long-distance infrared photography and distances observed?
The long-distance IR photography, from at least Jay Tolan Media is pretty epic in that 6,000 feet, and I have 3 debunk videos of this, and so does Bob the Science Guy, so does a lot of people nowadays debunking his claims of the points of the altitudes of those mountains. But I did simple comparisons with Photoshop with a closer image of Mount San Jacinto, and saw that basically you could only see about 1/4 of it from 123 miles away, as Jay Tolan purported. And also in his own videos, I think it's called New Mexico from a Plane or something, he's actually looking out the window, seeing what looks like Earth's curvature, and he puts even a straight line up to it and says, is it the curved window? Is it the curved lens? Is it the curved eye effect? So the guy's got observations that go with the spherical Earth, and people continue to think that he can see the whole mountain from 123 miles away. Well, it's very clear that he's only seeing the tips of it. It's a 10,800, I think, foot mountain, and he can only see basically the top about 6,000 or from 6,000 foot and above of that mountain. So that he never explained that, and he went out and did a gravity test, which a lot of us were very puzzled how he was calling that a gravity test. I personally think the guy's either a po and trolling, or he's got some issues, seriously.
Okay, well, we have your claim today of seeing, demonstrating curvature, but we have a question from Flat Phrase 68 who says, Neil deGrasse Tyson says no curve from 128,000 feet. Explain that, and why soon I accept your evidence.
I guess this goes back to kind of the x-axis curvature of against like seeing the effects of curvature from a distant object near the ground. So a lot of us are doing observations that are showing the kind of z-axis, so to speak, curvature effect from the ground. Now, like I said, you can take, and really this is all hinged on people using quotes from entertainers. I don't listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think he's an absolute dipshit, truthfully. I mean, he's talking about Coriolis effect off a 50-yard football kick. Like, that's really a straw man to be like, well, one of the globe priests says this. I'm like, well, my observations and my experiments speak for themselves, at least for me. There's a lot of people in the chat that will continue to be like, oh, this didn't prove anything. Look at the flatness on the water. Look how flat it is. But really, it's like, I don't care. Like, a lot of you guys are trolling yourselves. You're not actually going to be able to troll me with these dumb questions and comments. You can't troll a pro troll. But to answer that, I know that you can see curvature from 120,000 feet. Actually, you can see it. And, when it comes to Rob Skiba or Dwayne Kellum or other high altitude balloons that have done used rectilinear lens, you can see that there is some curvature, and it's not a perfectly straight line if you take it into Photoshop. So this isn't the wobbly, concave to convex to flat. Really, it actually never goes flat in those, but it's not like I would use a fisheye lens or one of those kind of videos to say, oh, look, curvature, the Red Bull jump. I wouldn't use that as evidence of curvature, because that lens is so ridiculously distorted. And then flat earthers will say, well, when he was in the cupola, you could see, how flat it was. And it's like, well, how many degrees of that actual, that very level looking or flat looking edge of the Earth, how much field of view can you actually see there? Like, it's being cut off by the doors of it, a lot of it. So needless to say, Neil deGrasse Tyson is an idiot. He'll go and talk to us about climate change with his buddy Bob or whatever his name is, the science guy, the popular one or whatever, because they're just entertainers, and I don't see them actually doing any kind of science or anything. They're just a lot of scientists are right-brained people. and they're very analytical, and they're not very entertaining. So we have these clowns come out and be like, yeah, I dropped a mic on live TV, Gravity. Like, that's just the way it is, and he doesn't speak for me, and I don't really give a shit what he says, basically.
Question from Skyfly Brian. Now, I don't know whether or not this is Sky trolling or not, and I don't know if this is true, but he's asking the question. Del from Beyond the Imaginary Curve is going to make a claim later that the flat Earth is moving upwards. Do you believe he's gone completely mad?
That'd be interesting to see him claim that. And really, it kind of reminds me of the Flat Earth Society, which one of the main ones was actually just put in jail for kid stuff. I won't go too much into that on your channel, but they initially said that the Earth was accelerating 9.81 upwards. And basically, there was a divide on the YouTube Flat Earthers and the Flat Earth Society because they had a different belief in what gravity was. And really, a lot of flat earthers now are going with this density and buoyancy argument, which they're not forces, and they have no idea at all what they're actually talking about. It's something that Riley will go around and kind of try to troll people with, basically. But I don't find that argument to be too far-fetched, because really, with the heliocentric model and what were proposed, the relative speeds that are happening, really we could be going 14 quadrillion miles an hour by now because of this upwards 9.8 meters per second. But of course, nothing else fits. Maybe Del will. I think Del has even lost the plot even further now. He's saying that pole is just like a hoax. He's saying pole is a hoax, basically. So he says, you're pushing an apple when you grab it off a tree. You're pushing, everything's a push force. So this is just another example of people redefining words and not accepting other words to suit their narrative.
Okay, I'm just looking for. Apparently, I've missed a question by Twitwit. I'm trying to find it right now, so just bear with me a second. It must have been a long time ago because I can't see it right now. If you want to repeat it, Twit, I will get around to asking him. I can't see it, it's so far back. Right, in the meantime, we have a question. There was a highlighted one up here. So, can you ask Tim how much curving degrees we should see on a horizon to horizon? That's from Drust the Legend.
From horizon to horizon, that doesn't even make any sense, truthfully. At what altitude? It's a malformed question, I think.
Okay, so I'm just waiting for Twitwit to repeat what she said.
Basically, she just said, why am I wasting, my genius on this subject still? Something to that effect. And really, if you look at the amount of videos I used to put out, a lot of trolling and a lot of satire, a lot of actual information as well mixed in with it, they're becoming much, much less and less every month. I think I've done like 2 or 3 videos this last month, and I'll continue to probably not do too many, because it is a subject that will never go anywhere. There's going to be people that believe it wholeheartedly, and there's always going to be a fight. And one of my biggest pet peeves is that I was calling out the flat earthers for being charlatans in the beginning, and then we have a bunch of fight the fat gourds and team pretend skeptic come in and start basically charlatanizing the globe side of it, and then all the cucks that go around and follow them are just some of the most pathetic people that I've ever seen. So really, I attribute myself more so with the flat Earth mentality, even though they're very hard-nosed about the Earth being flat and they don't like to look at evidence and they'll make excuses up about everything. I feel as if I have more in common with them than most of the cucks on the other side, because they can't even look into things like 9/11. They can't understand all of the things surrounding that day, that and they haven't read the official stories, and they just can't actually fathom it because of the implications would actually be too much for them. So, yeah, I feel for the conspiratorial-minded a little bit more, because I can sit there and talk to them about hydrofluorosilicic acid. I can talk to them about, fluoride in the water, different things, and bounce ideas off their heads. Maybe what happened in the 1940s over on a different continent, perhaps, kind of bounce ideas off each other. And, with the globe cucks, I mean, I might as well just read Wikipedia, or, they're going to read Wikipedia to me, or they're just going to deny anything that is, that goes a little bit, even a little bit against the mainstream. So I don't respect people like that, personally. Maybe I feel that they are part of the problem when it comes to actually progressing humanity and kind of coming to terms with what's happened in the past. You ask them about Operation Northwoods or any of that stuff. Gulf of Tonkin, a lot of people died from Vietnam over a false narrative that happened. They just don't care. Like, who cares? So it's really sad to me, really.
We have a question from Brandon Toy, who asks, what is your motivation for spending so much time trying to debunk Flat Earth? And then we have a question from Jose, who asks, are you going to do more long distance for observations, or more different, like landscape and cool, different type of footage? So 2 little questions there.
I actually don't spend that much time, and mostly comparatively to what I used to do. It used to be a hobby, and people who are worried about why or how much time I spend in a subject need to probably look at their own life and see how much time they're spending in the subject and question themselves. Maybe a little bit of mental projection happening there, but I'll spend as much time as I see fit, and really it's nobody's business how much time I spend on it, because it just isn't. I don't go around and say, hey, you're spending a lot of time in a subject. That's just a really silly thing to question someone about. So like I said, I have like 2 or 3 videos in the past month that I did, and comparatively to what I used to put out, probably a few a week at least, I have slowed down quite a bit. And I enjoy actually going on to Jose's when there aren't like a bunch of flat earth trolls on there, because I enjoy Jose as a person. I enjoy the format, and that's what the original flat earth debate, well, not the original, but Nathan's flat earth debate was supposed to be about, and it was about until about show 90 when Quantum Eraser joined. So I enjoy bouncing ideas off of other people, but a lot of what is today is just basically a lot of parroting of what Nathan Oakley and Quantum Eraser say. And there's really not much content to actually be able to dig deep into. So I've lost a lot of interest actually in the subject. And the only reason why I'm on here is to kind of put some of my observations on the table, and that I actually appreciate what you're doing. I would like to, share some of my content with your intentions as, hey, let's get all kinds of people on with different ideas about things, and just let them talk. Not have this, you're a retard, or all this negative back and forth that a lot of people like to see, the clown show that happens. Shout out to Trolls vs. Trolls. But so that's why I'm here, and that's why I continue to talk about it. But as far as Jose, what he says, I'm always doing photography, actually. When I go to a different state, when I travel or whatever, I have tons of images that I haven't even seen yet. I'll have a camera on me most likely anywhere I go. So, I got all over the United States observations, and I do, I guess, actually want to do try to get like a long distance observation, and I've already done like 95 miles, I think 120 miles at one point. But in Utah, I can actually go up to a tall mountain, and on a very clear day, probably do very, very long distance observations. Perhaps even get around what they got with the 323 kilometers or whatever that one was for the longest line of sight observation. So that is something I do on the regular.
Okay, so just in response to Pele, I'm only being stone-faced just right now. It's fine. So we got a question from a man like me who asks, when will you be getting a more powerful camera than the one you actually have, and when will you get to do your experiment again?
I guess powerful would be a question of perhaps the lens, which I don't think is as important as the quality of the sensor. I've actually been looking at getting like a Nikon D750 or 850 or something like that for a while, but really that's just going to give better resolution to the images, and it's not really actually going to make me see things, so to speak, further away. The cameras, I mean, you can almost take a cell phone picture with a 90 mile an hour or mile distant mountain if you wanted to. So it's 24 megapixel. I think it's full frame actually at this point. I'm kind of blank, and I have probably 7-8 different lenses. I think the max lens I have is like 300 mil, because it's just not important to be able to zoom so far when you actually have more sensor to use. You can just do that in post. So perhaps I'll get a better camera fairly soon, but I was probably going to get a 2020 MacBook probably pretty soon. So I don't know. We'll see.
Cool. So I noticed this is just me asking you, but I know you'd said that you wanted to come on this format. I mean, how do you feel that it's just like you and my audience to just talk to?
I mean, I feel that it's necessary, I guess, at this point in this conversation. The people that are in the chat trolling, as far as the flat Earth side, are probably never going to get it. They're, the people that are saying this didn't prove anything, like Nathan and all that stuff. They're just, from a person that has basically no observations, no experiments himself, and makes a bunch of hot air nearly every day for money. Like it doesn't even faze me at all. And for a lot of these sock accounts that are flat earthers that do absolutely nothing, like their words are so hollow and empty, it's unimaginable. So there's a lot of people that I just don't take seriously at all what they're saying. But it comes with the territory, I guess, when it comes to even the people that are globe earthers that have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to Building 7 or something like that. So, I pick and choose. But as far as the format, like I said, don't let anybody tell you anything about the format. There's going to be haters in every sense of the word. I don't think you should do this. And, having 100 dislikes on this video and 33 before we even started or I even said a word is a testament to what you're doing here. And dislikes doesn't mean anything, really. So keep them up. And, the amount of interaction that these people have done for this chat is going to bring more eyes to it, more ears to it. So it is what it is. But just keep it, dude. Like you're doing your thing, and there's no other really format like this. I mean, Jose is very close, but there's a lot of like troll sessions that happen, and there's multiple people, and really it's hard to even get a word in edgewise most times, let alone a whole presentation. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it.
Cool. Because the idea being is that you've done a presentation now. Hopefully somebody else that's done observations or maybe has some kind of counterclaim to why those buildings appear to be hidden behind Earth curve may want to do a presentation themselves, put it out there, and we then have two opposing presentations that are on record. So they're both on record. You've done your presentation, they'll do theirs, and then if you ever have a debate, if you ever get around to having a debate with each other, you will already have that as a basis to judge where they are in their own journey, and you'll have that to fall back on because you'll have seen the evidence that they have. And I think that this is what's needed. We need the best of the best to come together, do the presentations, counter it, claim it, debate it, and move forward. If there's no resolution after a first debate, we can have a second debate, a third debate. Eventually we'll nail down some concessions somewhere, hopefully. And I know that you've been asking for explanations to this observation for a long time, and I haven't been able to give you any answers to that. And that's been my only. That's been the one observation that stumped me. I have an observation that stumped you. You have an observation that stumped me, and I can't explain it. Doesn't mean that there isn't an explanation for it. But me personally, I can't do that. But maybe somebody's watching that has some kind of insight into why that appeared the way it did. So, if there's any more questions, guys, we'll give it 30 more seconds. If there's no more questions, we'll wrap up. So let's just see if anybody comes through.
Racer FE says, will you come back if someone does a counter presentation? Most likely not, because it will be one or multiple of the explanations or the excuses, in my opinion, that I showed at the beginning of this, the 86 different excuses that I've heard and other people have heard over this whole journey called Flat Earth here. So it's going to be something to that effect, and it's just really not worth my time. Mostly when it's very important. These over the Bonneville Salt Flats, the observations with the drone I have that I didn't even show, and the observations with the D3200 I have and other cameras. It's like I've already for sure proven it to myself. Like, this isn't even going into the sky, and I'd rather do a presentation on the celestial sphere, seasonal stars, the equinox observations, the solar and lunar eclipses that work not only observationally but logically that we're on a sphere. So somebody might come up and try to squawk out of both sides of their mouth about my observations, but they're just observations. They're just pictures. And, of course, when you have the flat Earth premise, you're going to have an excuse for that, an excuse in my opinion. And really, at the end of the day, I would just ask, why is it not the Earth curving? Mostly with all the stuff I just outlined about the sky. Why is it not the Earth curving? I only showed 2 days of the buildings, but I have I think 8 days that I went out there looking specifically at the buildings, doing observations from different heights, and basically they all match up, and I never even come close to seeing the bottom of them. So it's just come up with an excuse, say that angular size or perspective has something to do with it. That's fine. Perspective, you look at a perspective drawing and a train track or lamppost or whatever, it never shows that things are being obstructed from bottom up. So that's not an excuse. That's not valid at all. Angular size, where are you going to go from there when you say that the angular size matters from the bottom of buildings? When gaining in altitude, you start to see more and more of it. It's just it's so simple, and it's it has to do with maybe a lack of understanding of simple geometry, or perhaps that they just don't want the Earth to be a globe, because they've been so newly well indoctrinated into this flat Earth idea. So it's just it's not a problem to me that people will perhaps come on and say, oh yeah, half the building's obstructed because of X, Y, or Z. Okay, cool, that's your explanation. I've already put my explanation out there, and really there's no back and forth needed. It is what it is, and it speaks for itself.
Okay, fair enough. We have a question from Chris Matt. So he wants to know, how does measuring what a fraction of the Earth looks like demonstrate how the whole Earth looks? What
was that again? How does measuring refraction?
No, measuring what a fraction of the Earth looks like demonstrate. In other words, you're doing an observation over 37 miles, which is a fraction of the Earth's size, apparently. So how does measuring that small fraction of the Earth demonstrate what the whole Earth looks like?
Well, like I said before, my Lake Tahoe observations are looking north-south over Lake Tahoe. My San Francisco's looking west and northwest. My Texas observations are looking north-south. My Utah observations are looking mostly east-west and a little variant of perhaps southeast. So it's if I've gone around and tested all over the place, and I'm seeing the basically the same amount of obstruction or curve depending on the distances of these objects, What else am I supposed to, what else, why would it lead me to believe that the Earth is flat? None of my observations lead me to believe the Earth is flat. The XYZ Cartesian ECEF coordinates that we got off of 2 tests match up very, very well with what they're presupposing, supposedly, the Earth's radius is. So it's like I've put out the work, I've done the work, and the drone observations speak for themselves, not being able to see a 600-foot mountain, basically, off the water, and you can once you start to raise. All of this stuff matches with what is proposed to us as kids, that the Earth is a sphere, and not to mention the hundreds of thousands of images and videos from space. And so, the thing is about also me coming back on with somebody's excuses that they want to bring up is that flat earthers can't even agree with each other, like, at all. So there's a pretty set in stone spherical Earth model that can describe with 99.9, in my opinion, % accuracy of things in the sky and the geoid and this all of surveying and all this kind of stuff. So it's like I think that a better model needs to be replaced with the globe Earth that demonstrates how the Earth is flat, not all these perspective wells and all these personal atmospheric domes and stuff. That's just bull, dude. Like, the Southern Hemisphere star trails are ridiculously they disprove flat Earth, like, outright. The sun setting and rising disprove flat Earth outright. And then you add on all these other things, and it's like, why would I ever think that the Earth is flat? I can sit here and talk for hours and hours about why I believe, or I know, I think I know, I believe I know, why the Earth is a sphere, with simple observations that we can all do, things that happen every single day. But they want to bring up all this anomalous shit like, oh, wow, it's refraction or perspective or angle of attack. Well, it's just not for me. Until the model is replaced with something that has more predictive capability, the Earth will be a sphere in my mind. And I haven't been convinced by any of the excuses thus far. And I'm very open-minded about it. So,
okay, we have quite a good question here from Trish Blythe, who asks, why we have observations that show we shouldn't be able to see any part of the buildings, but we can. Can you also explain to him that he is using a predetermined calculation, not doing his own observations? Well, observe something. I assume that means something.
So,
but basically, she's asking, why do we see things that we shouldn't? Never mind obstruction, but why do we see things that we shouldn't? And can you also explain that you're using a begging the question, predetermined Earth curve calculator?
That's hilarious. A lot of these observations, when I went out and did them, they are observations. They are me just knowing that I'm 5 foot above the water, 1.5 foot, or 25 foot above the water. I actually didn't bring in the curve calculator until you guys were bringing it in. Ranty and Nathan on their channel always saying, bringing it in, oh, it's orthographic, or, it's BS or whatever. So I'm not even really big about using the Earth curve calculator. And really, I never use McWest's curve calculator. I'll go to Walter Bislin's forum and actually use all the different modeling and models that he has. So the thing about presupposing something, well, if it's presupposed and then it turns out to be the case that it matches the presupposition, then it's not a presupposition anymore. Like, my observations have been modeled on the quote-unquote presupposed globe, and any kind of model that wants to do flat Earth or whatever doesn't match observations. So you guys need to come up with something, a flat Earth curve calculator that will actually be able to lead some credence towards the Earth being flat, but thus far there isn't one. And what I can use is something that quote-unquote presupposes something, just like the 3959 or whatever it is of the radius. Okay, well, that was given to us. I'll say that's a presupposition. I didn't test for it. But then we went out and used XYZ Cartesian coordinates, GPS systems that are like the standard in now building roads and building things, and they're used every single day all around the world and known to be accurate, very, very accurate. And then I come up with, just by putting the data points in, what was told to us. Okay, so I mean, I could do sticks in the ground, I could do all that kind of stuff, but at a certain point, a presupposition actually turns into something that's proven and knowledge. And the only reason why that person's actually saying presupposition is because I was the one that taught that to fucking Nathan Oakley. So he started using a lot of the stuff that I said against the Globers. And then, you know, you get Quantum Eraser in there, misapplying logical fallacies continuously. So these people are just parrots. They just walk around, oh, you're presupposing stuff. Well, no, actually, to a person that has done absolutely no testing of the ground that they stand on, compared to a person like myself who has done multiple tests and observations and experiments, well, you're just talking out both sides of your neck, really.
Okay, so the first part of that question was, you know, why can we see the bottom of things that we shouldn't be able to on the Earth curve calculator?
Well, we don't. I mean, I think the question's malformed, but I'll just answer it as I think they were actually saying it. You know, there's a lot of videos that say we shouldn't be able to see this. We see too far, and then we go and test them, and it's actually not the case. So the person actually needs to put in what video they're saying. I've already admitted that Ranty has one that it has like some very peculiar refractive effects that is pulling the buildings and the shoreline up. And, you know, I haven't seen another one of those that even comes close to what Ranty's done. That would be convincing if everything else fit with a flat Earth, but it doesn't. So we see obstruction, we see boats going over the horizon, we see the sun setting and not changing in angular size throughout the day, even though flat earthers want to go on and on about perspective. Well, why isn't it changing in angular size throughout the day and then it rises and it sets? That's very simple. So, you know, it's not going into the flat Earth. It's not crashing into it. Oh, it's getting further away, but it has this effect. Like Rob Skiba will say, it has, you know, just amount of, you know, atmospheric conditions that make it just the same size throughout the day, basically. And then it, you know, gets too far away and then it sets. I mean, this is like elementary stuff. It doesn't work geometrically at all. And what does work geometrically are the curve calculators. They are working. And as far as atmospheric conditions go, people before us have been doing crazy long-term tests on the effects of atmospheric conditions. And so we can build on the body of knowledge, at least for ourselves, when it comes to actually researching these topics and not just watching YouTube videos. Like, you got to actually go out and test the world around you. And that's what that's what Ranty's done. That's what a few others have actually done. Me and Ranty together, probably our observations would probably trump basically every other flat earther, every other globe earther, probably almost combined, truthfully. So, you know, we're people that actually go and spend money and go and do these observations. And then when somebody comes in and says, oh, you're begging the question, it's like, no, actually I try to demonstrate how we tested the supposed presupposition, and you just won't have it because you're thick or something. So
okay, so Dabbing Good thinks you're sort of skipping over the main point, which is we see too far. And obviously I know what you've just said, which is ultimately that if they're putting in the wrong viewer height, and when you work all these calculations out, it actually falls within a reasonable view, you know, distance to be seen. But what happens when you see things way too far that you shouldn't see? What's happening there?
I haven't seen an example of that. But what I have seen is you know, people like, and I'll share my screen really quickly. People like Jay Tolan here, who have the tip of a mountain at 123 miles away, and 6,000 feet of this mountain is being obstructed. So he'll come out and say this is the whole mountain, basically. And then there will be about 10, 20 different debunks from other flat Earth debunkers come out and say, actually, no. And I was one of the first ones to do it, and I just simply did it, like I said, with Photoshop earlier. This debunks flat Earth. Like, I understand, oh, we can see too far, but no, actually, we're seeing just the right amount of this mountain. And he's like, I think 86 feet up or whatever near Malibu. This is 123 miles away. It's a 10,800 foot mountain. Well, why is 6,000 feet plus of it being obstructed by a flat Earth? There's no explanation at all. So and then you can look at his own work. So I'm looking at a flat earther's work here, supposedly a flat earther. And you can see how he says, oh, wow, I'm in a plane, curved edge. He did this himself. I didn't even have to do this. He says flat world down here. He said curved window effect, ? Visibility blocked. And it's like, oh, well, are we seeing too far? Are we not seeing a curve? Are we seeing a flat Earth? I'm not really sure. But even, I'll have to say Ranty's work demonstrates a curved Earth. This guy's work demonstrates a curved Earth. So if people want to give me where people think that they can see too far, well, let me know. But what I see is, tests at the Salton Sea where they're using mirrors, and it's very deceptive as far as they're almost at the height of the buildings, it seems, in the background. And so a lot of times this isn't very well documented, what flat earthers are actually doing. So the person in the chat, if you want an example of where we can see too far and give it to me, that's fine. But I have tons of observations myself and others, even from flat earthers, that show the latter. It shows actually a different story. So maybe there are some that, like Ranty's, very rare occasion that something like that can happen. But on most normal days, I can go out to Great Salt Lake and see that it looks like it's underwater on a flat Earth. So what am I supposed to think? Any part, I think they're going on about why I started talking about the sun. It's very simple if you actually open your ears. But why are things being obstructed? Well, obviously, in our opinion, here on the globe side, it is because there's geometry to the Earth other than flat, and it's curved downwards away from you. And it's very evident in all of my evidence when it comes to the drone and the camera photography, all throughout the year, mind you. So I don't know. And then people say, like, there is no planetary observation by which we on Earth can prove that the Earth is moving in orbit around the sun. Physicist Bernard Cohen. Okay, well, if we're not moving, then it's geocentric sphere Earth. And this person isn't a geocentrist. He's actually a heliocentric sphere Earther. So all they have to do is look up, oh, Einstein said this, or second law of thermodynamics. This definition says this. All of where they're actually quoting from are from sphere Earth people. So they try to cherry pick stuff to try to fit their narrative, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fit their narrative because the people don't believe the way that they do. If the Earth isn't spinning and it's geocentric, which I still hold perhaps a 5% chance, well, then it's still a sphere, dude. And really the whole ultimate question of this is it a flat Earth or is it a round Earth? So. Okay,
so apparently I had my mute button on again, so when I tried to ask that to Trish, it didn't feed through, so I'll just ask it one last time. But Trish has actually said something here. Why can we see, hang on, wait a minute, why can we see things that shouldn't totally covered? There are plenty of examples, come on, question mark.
Yeah, I've been in this conversation for 4.5 years. I had many different debunks of where we can quote unquote see too far on my channel. As I said before, I went through all of your work. There was only one that I could bring up. And so, it's just a rehash of the same question of like, oh, I watched a video one time, like Jenna Fredo or something, and she could see too far. And it's like, then you bring up that video and half the skyline's gone. Or it's like, oh, Josh Nowicki, yeah, he has a picture. And then you bring that up and it's like, actually it's a time lapse and you can see the effects of refraction. And it's like, oh, Soundly has a picture. It's like, no, he has like hundreds of observations actually. So these people are primarily just watching YouTube videos, and a lot of times they can't actually step out and watch the debunk videos. You put in Jay Tolan Media, you're going to get the Bob the Science guys. You're going to get all these different people nowadays now that YouTube's changed the algorithm. So there's no excuse that you guys haven't watched the debunks of the videos that you think are actually showing you that it's too far. I don't, if they can't bring up a specific occasion that is the case, then they have no argument with me, because I've seen most of the observations that flat earthers have done, because I'm interested in looking at photography. So I've seen them, I've tested them, and we can see too far doesn't mean anything to me. It's just like, bring up a specific example, please.
Okie dokie. Right, Timmy, I'm going to round up in a minute. I'm going to give you a few minutes if you want to say anything, plug your channel, anything like that. I'll let you have the mic. Tell us when you're finished, and then I'll round up.
Cool, yeah. People know me. They can find me. It's Timothy Osman. Tim Osman, actually. I've changed that channel to Tim Osman, so they can find it. They can see some of my observations. A lot of times I'm just taking the piss, or having a satirical way with flat Earth. And my last video was on Bob from Globebusters and the fiber optic gyro, trying to not only educate the people on the flat Earth side, but also educate the people on the globe Earth side that go around on debates and use against flat earthers a documentary where it leads you to believe that there was a ring laser gyro that detected 15 degrees and that Jaron proved the curvature. So there's a lot more to that story, and I feel that it's very lazy for these Fight the Fat Gourd people to actually be doing that. So there's a lot of story that's actually on there, and it shows a lot of really, truthfully, Globebusters Bob, his lies. He's lied in the past. He's been called out. He's never been able. He's just changed the wording or removed videos, and so it kind of shows the point that Seventh Day True Seeker got this fiber optic gyro. They had all these kinds of conversations to figure out how it worked, but also basically to figure out a way to not get the results that they were getting as far as the derivation of 15 degrees. So they had bismuth, they had they were thinking of all kinds of things, tilting it upside down. They had a Helmholtz coil. They had a lot of different things that they were trying to basically get different results through that thing. And basically at the end of the day, they did multiple tests that match with what is expected on not only a spinning Earth, but a spinning globe Earth. So a lot of people don't understand the complexities because it just goes over their head. Like it's like a lot of very ignorant people have fallen for the flat Earth, and I'm sorry to say that, but it's just that way. And even Bob himself has issues with it because he's talking about more advanced subjects, and nobody's listening because it goes way over their head. So anyway. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. We'll get in touch as far as me doing a celestial sphere and objects in the sky that tell us that we're definitely on a sphere chat sometime. And like you said, you don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. You've been looking into optics and atmospheric conditions and cameras and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind actually coming on to tell you and the people with ears to hear why the Earth is a sphere when you look up at this sky, and a lot of the fallacies, misnomers that flat earthers come up with. Why is it the same sky? And why is it always the same sky? And 6 months later, we should see a different set of stars. And it's like, actually, we do. There's a thing called seasonal stars. And so a lot of stuff we'll get into at a later date. But this was mostly just to go over a few of my observations and what I've discovered as far as going out to the Great Salt Lake. I definitely would tell people to check it out. There's a lot of things like tidal bores that Ranty brings up. Just don't happen there. So, huge waves or swells are just not going to happen there. And you're higher up in altitude, so you're going to get better seeing conditions. It's also the air and water temperature are very close, so you're going to get better seeing conditions. So if you're testing on how far we can see or we can see too far kind of thing, I suggest going to the Great Salt Lake. It's the best place that I've found, and I've been all over the United States. If you're in the U.S., definitely go and check it out. So anyway, thanks, Ranty. It was good chat, man. And stay unbiased and keep doing what you're doing. Don't even read out the comments of people. Oh, you should change the format or crap like that, dude. There's always going to be haters with everything that you do. I personally think you're doing a service to the flat Earth here. So good job, man.
Cheers, Timmy. Right, if you want to stick yourself on mute, I'll just round up. Yeah, guys. This format's just started, so you got to bear with this. I'm sure over the next few months we're probably going to get at least 3 or 4 both flat Earth and globe Earthers coming with observations. We're also going to get people talking about the South Celestial stars and all that kind of stuff. Coriolis, you name it, they're all going to come in. There'll be points from the globe Earth side and points from the flat Earth side. The main thing we need to do is have it documented. We need to have it documented to say exactly what they believe, why they believe it, and do a presentation about it. And then hopefully we can get these 2 people to engage in a debate. You know, that's the format that I would like to do. That's what I'm expecting to happen. There's still a massive shout out right now for Friday, so I am still looking for a flat earther to get in touch with me for the 6 p.m. BST on this Friday to do a presentation. So if there's anybody there, they can email me at ranty@rantyflatearth.com. I will put the link in the description, the email address. And yeah, if you can get a presentation put together by Friday, we'll do that 6 p.m. BST. I have a globe earther coming in at 9 p.m. He's going to be doing a presentation, funnily enough, about the Southern Hemisphere. So that should be really interesting. I've listened to his presentation already. It's, you know, it's controversial but very entertaining, and I'm looking forward to present that. So that will be at 9 p.m. BST this coming Friday. So if you're a flat earther out there and you've got anything you want to talk about, a specific topic inside the debate, get in touch with me, ranty@rantyflatearth.com, and we'll do it just like this. There's no pressure, there's no hassle. You come in, you do your presentation, you take some questions from the side chat. You don't have to have a channel, you don't have to have even spoken in the side chat. You could just be somebody that's doing their own research behind the scenes that just wants to do a presentation and get something off the chest. Okie dokie. So without further ado, thank you everybody else for stopping by. Again, Jose, thank you very much for sending your entire entire chat over here, because it was an excellent start to the show, so thank you very much. And Tim, again, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for all the people that smashed the super chat. I do appreciate that very much, thank you. And I'll see you again on Friday, everybody. Till next time.